Hi friends, it's Miracle, and today I want to introduce you to a bunch of interesting books that I found from and about Lebanon when I was doing the research for the From and About Asia reading project for January. And as usual, all the information about this project will be linked down below, including a webpage for this particular video. So check it out if you want, and also join the Discord server for more in-depth discussion if you're interested. I found there are so many books were translated from Arabic or French by Lebanon's authors, and also there are so many intriguing books on the topic of Lebanon. This will be the first of two videos I'm making on the topic of Lebanon. Later on, I'll make a wrap-up video talking about the book that I personally read and the things I learned. So disclaimer here that I didn't and don't plan to read all the books in this video apparently due to the limited times we have. So most of the information here are gathered when I was doing my research. And please bear with me if I butcher any of the names of the authors or the translators because I don't speak French or Arabic, and sometimes I don't think I'm even speaking English that well. So I'll try my best, apologize in advance. And without further ado, let's dive into the books. Firstly, let's take a look at the interesting fiction books that I found. Firstly, we have a short story collection that I'm gonna read. It's called Jokes for the Gunman by Mazzy Maroof, translated by Joanna Wright. These are stories about life in the war zone, full of mistakes, tragic accident, and painful encounters. It's told from a child vengeful but also moderate perspective created by the nature of the war, including topics like sex and death, and more importantly, the ability of turning life into jokes. And then there's a book one of our Discord members is reading. It's called June Rain by Jibor Duerhe, translated by Polar Haidar. This is a historical fiction set in 1957 in northern Lebanon. A village shooting broke out and killed 2,000 people. After it, the village divided into two parts. People are forced to betray each other, neighbors became enemies, and wives and husbands are forced to choose between the loyalty to their family or to their clans. This novel is inspired by the true killing event that happens to the author's own town and talks about how village life can be consumed by violence and revenge. Particularly interesting after knowing that Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, is divided into two parts by religions as well. Then I have here a book called Confessions by Rabbi Jaber, translated by Corinne James and Abu Zaid. It is set during the Lebanese Civil War. A car pulled up on the side road, and after a while, a shooting broke out into the car and killed everybody inside except a little boy. The boy was adopted by one of the assassins and raised in his family as a new family member. This story was told from this boy's perspective after he grew up. It sounds so dark and thrilling. Following is a book called Limbo Beirut by Hilal Schumann and translated by Anna Ziyak Stanton. A group of people, including a gay artist, a struggling novelist, a disabled engineering student, and a pregnant woman, take turns to narrate a violent event that happened on the street in May 2008. Despite the fears, the event provided an opportunity for these people to break free from the details of day-to-day life and look at the world in a new view. Next is Broken Mirrors by Elika Ray, translated by Humphrey Davis. This is a story about the reverse culture shock. It's talking about a man went back to live in Lebanon for 6 months after he lived in France for 10 years. He's forced to face the fact that his brother married his former lover, and he's reintroduced to all the culture, religious, and the conflict that happened in his homeland. And he has to contemplate his own identity and his place in the Lebanese history. And there's another book by Lebanese French. It's called Disoriented by Amy Maroof, translated by Frank Wen. The protagonist, Adam, lived in France for 25 years, and he had to go back to Lebanon because he heard that his childhood friend is dying. And learning all his childhood friends are taking on different paths in life, his past caught up to him. White Masks is also a novel written by Elias Curry, translated by Maya Tabet, started a story where people found a corpse in a municipal garbage dump. The body is is a civil servant who disappeared weeks ago. A journalist started to piece an answer for this crime by interviewing different groups of people. The story merges the horror that brought by civil war and the terrifying effect that violence plays on people. I don't see a lot of mystery novels when I was researching for From and About Asia reading project, so the setting of this book is very refreshing. Next book is called Moving the Palace by Sharif Majglani, translated by Edward Gavin. This is an adventure story about a Lebanese explorer who traveled from Lebanon to Sudan, Egypt, and Arabian Peninsula. He encountered skeptical shades, suspicious tribe leaders, and bountiful feasts, and all sorts of people. This book sounds so fun and have a totally different tone from all the other books that was written about the shadows of wars in Lebanon. The last fictional book in this video is also about traveling, but back to the dark theme of war. It's called Pearls on a Branch, Arabic stories told by women in Lebanon today. This book is collected and written by Najla Kare. This is a collection of 30 short stories that she collected over the years when she was traveling around Lebanon with a theater troupe. Stories was told by peoples around Lebanon, including isolated villagers and refugees. Following, I found an interesting poetry collection called Time by Ital Annam, translated by Sarah Riggs. Poet Ital Annam was born in Lebanon and lived in Beirut, Paris, and California across her life and became a profound American poet. I found her life very interesting because she once became a painter instead of a poet to resist the political implement of writing in French. I never thought of this before, but it makes so much sense because languages has a bar of understanding but paintings don't. In this poetry collection, we see the intertwine of war and love, coffee and bombs, empathetic observations, and emphatic details. And then I have two graphic memoirs, both by Zina Abrash and translated by Edward Gavin. The first is A Game for Swallows, To Die, To Live, To Return, and the second one is I Remember Beirut. Both of these are about the author's memories of Beirut, which is a city that is divided into two parts by religion. In A Game for Swallows, it's about the author's parents. One day they went into the other part of the city and they didn't make it back. So the author and her brother needed to get by this dramatic day with some help from the neighbors. And I Remember Beirut is a bits of pieces of memories about how Beirut works as a city at the time. And moving on to nonfictions, there are still so many interesting books about Lebanon, but these books are not necessarily written by Lebanese authors. They include a lot of books that are written by authors from other countries, but about Lebanon. First of all, I have here Lebanon, A Country in Fragments by Andrew Arson. This is a tome on my January TBR for the From and About Asia reading project, and I'm proud to say that I have already finished it. This book is about the recent history of Lebanon from 2005 onward. It has two parts. The first part is talking more about political events happened from 2005, and the second part is more talking about how people lived in Lebanon these days. I found this book very interesting and also very tired to read, and I'll talk more about it in my wrap-up for Lebanon. Then there's a book called The House of Many Mansions, The History of Lebanon Reconsidered by Kamal Salabi. This book talks about how Lebanon became one of the world's most divided countries from a historical point of view. And then there's a book that I'm so interested in reading, but it has more than 750 pages, and I don't think I have time for it. The book is called Pity the Nation, The Abduction of Lebanon by Robert Fisk. Fisk is one of the first journalists that bin Laden announced his jihad against US to. This book covers the time from the early 1980s when Lebanon was under the shadow of the Israel-Palestine crisis and when it comes to a wartime heat, until when Israeli withdrew from southern Lebanon in the 2000. It says this book is the most distinguished book on this topic. Then there's a book just called Beirut by Samir Kassir, translated by Malcolm de Beauvois. This book is talking specifically about the development of the city of Beirut, including 19th and 20th century. It concentrates on the emergence after the Second World War and also the near destructions during the Lebanese Civil War. The book also talks about how the city is facing the modern changes and how it survived to be this picturesque, dynamic, and resilient city. Following, I have 4 memoirs that I found very interesting. The first is called Beirut 2020, The Diaries of a Collapse by Sharif Majlani. This book contains small pieces of interactions with all sorts of people, including restaurant patrons, the patients of their family, refugees, and repairmen, talking about the accident that happened in Beirut when 2,750 tons of explosives exploded on August 4th, 2020 in a port in Beirut. This explosion devastated the city and the country, leaving 200 dead and thousands injured. This book also talking about the grief and the rebuild of the city afterwards. The next memoir is called A Word I Love, the story of an Arab woman by Wandad Makdisi Cordes. This memoir describes the author's personal experience in the Middle East from when she was 7 years old. The author lived through the oppressive French Mandate in Lebanon and tried to forge an Arab identity under the religious tolerance. And she also recounts the experience that she witnessed her beloved country being divided by the sectarians and religious division. Then there is Taida, Mother and Me, Generations of Arab Women by Jean Said Makdisi. This is Jean telling her family story over hundreds of years as an Arab Christian family living in Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and Egypt. Last memoir and also the last book I have here in this video is called House of Stone, a memoir about home, family, and a lost Middle East by Anthony Shadid. Anthony Shadid is a Lebanese American. He was one of the 4 reporters from New York Times that was captured in Libya in 2011. When he's freed, he went back home to Oklahoma City, where his great-grandfather's estate is located, and also where he has a house he started to rebuild 3 years ago. Tracing his family history, he recounts the journey that his family moving from Lebanon to America and provide insights to the landscape. And that concludes all the books I want to introduce you in this video. I don't know why, I found even the researching process for these books is very interesting and enjoyable. I hope you found some of these books interesting and maybe you can pick 1 or 2 up in the future. And again, if you're interested in From and About Asia reading projects, please check out all the information down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know any of your thoughts relate or not related to these books, and don't forget to say hi in the comment section down below. Thumbs up to this video if you liked it. I wish you happy reading, stay healthy. I'll see you in my next bookish video. Bye!